Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Wildlife podcast. I am your host, Courtney, and if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, welcome. We discuss everything from our wildlife, specifically our Australian wildlife. We talk about conservation efforts and how, and more importantly, why we should be protecting our planet, not just for our wildlife, but for us humans too. If you are a returning listener, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in every single week and supporting the podcast. That means you're supporting me. You know I appreciate you. But this week we are discussing a small but extremely fascinating Australian marsupial, our adorable little Pademelons. I was asked a couple of weeks ago from a listener to create an episode on our Pademelons. So this one's for you. And of course, everyone else that has tuned in and is excited to learn a thing or two about our Pademelons. They are definitely the lesser known animal from our macropod family. But we are going to learn of their behavior, of their biology, and of course, the role they play in the ecosystem. And I can say right now off the bat, our Pademelons play a significant role in their ecosystem. So let's jump straight into it. Thank you again for tuning in. This is our conversation on our Pademelon. So, what is a Pademelon? Pademelons are small nocturnal mammals. A marsupial. So we have three mammal groups. I will try to break this down. These three mammal groups are based on the evolutionary traits and their characteristics. So of course we have our marsupials, which includes our Pademelons, our kangaroos, our koalas. These animals give birth to extremely undeveloped young. And this is where the female will have a pouch on the front or a backwards facing pouch where she will store that joey until it develops. It gets stronger, it gets all the nutrients it needs. We then have one of our most interesting mammals, our monotremes. These are egg-laying mammals. So these include our two animals that live here in Australia, our echidnas and our platypus. And then, of course, we have our placentile mammals, which include us humans, whales and bats. And these mammals give birth to fully developed young, supported by a placenta, hence the name placentile mammal. But our Pademelon falls under the category of a marsupial. So the female Pademelon has that front pouch on her where when she gives birth to an extremely undeveloped young, probably the size of a jelly bean, it will continue to grow in that pouch. And our Pademelons actually have a relatively short gestation period, not the shortest, but it is roughly anywhere from 25 to 30 days, and then she will give birth. Our Pademelon is relatively small compared to its other family members, like our kangaroos and our wallabies. Our kangaroos are the largest, and our red kangaroo is the largest kangaroo. They are so strong and powerful. They can be over 6 feet and they can be absolutely jacked. But our Pademelon is a very small member of the family. They grow anywhere between 40 and 60 centimeters, weighing anywhere between 5 and 10 kilograms. They also have a few other distinct features. They have much shorter legs, they have rounded bodies, a little bit of a stocky body, and they range in colors from an orange to a red to a brown to a grey, and they often sport a much lighter underbelly. All of this really helps with camouflaging into their environment, which just so happens to be woodlands and forests and rainforests. The Pademelon is nocturnal, meaning that it is mostly active throughout the nighttime, and you typically see our Pademelons resting in the day under thick grasses or in thick vegetation away from the eyes of predators. And there are a few predators for our Pademelons. On mainland, we have our introduced dingoes, our introduced foxes, and down in Tasmania, we have our Tasmanian devils and quolls, which prey upon our little Pademelons. And unfortunately, still today, humans. So as I mentioned, they live in forests and woodlands and gullies. So they are herbivores. Their food is abundant in these places, so they feed on a lot of grasses and shrubs and roots. Now, there are actually 7 different species of our little pademelons, and they live all around the eastern part of the country and down into Tasmania. So they start up in our Cape York Peninsula region, all the way down the Queensland coast, down the New South Wales coast, and then they skip down into Tasmania, where they live in an abundance. They are thriving down in our Tasmania region. They are quite shy, so you don't tend to see them approaching humans. They are solitary as well, only coming together to mate. So a home range for one pademelon is anywhere from 1 to 4 hectares. So they definitely like their space. And you may not realize or notice, but our pademelons are extremely important for the health of their ecosystem, and actually in turn it helps out humans. So our pademelons particularly live in rainforests, especially up in our northern part of Queensland, and they thrive here, but they also help the ecosystem. They help by maintaining vegetation and plant growth. They also help prevent one plant species becoming abundant, which means it could turn invasive in a sense, and they help control these plant populations by eating a little bit of everything. They are a food source for predators as well, which means they play a key part or a key role in the food chain. They are incredibly important. Other animals rely on our pademelons. Apart from our predators, humans still play a role in the population decline of the pademelon. We have climate change and habitat loss and deforestation, especially with our rainforest population of our pademelons. They are heavily affected by deforestation. Climate change also impacts their food sources and interferes with their breeding patterns, which is really concerning because once breeding patterns start to disrupt and start to, not breed once a year, multiple times a year when they need to, the populations start to die off, which is extremely concerning. There are organizations, though, and conservation efforts put into place to help protect our pademelons and keep their homes from being knocked down, from being destroyed. We have protected areas for our pademelons, but we also are trying to control the introduced species population. So this is our dingoes and our foxes and our feral cats. Our feral cats have been known to destroy and interfere with our pademelons' homes, with their environment. So we are trying to control these pest populations so our native animals and our important animals for the ecosystem, like our pademelon, thrive instead of the invasive or introduced species. Now, although they are abundant down in the beautiful state of Tasmania, it is really important that humans still aren't interfering with nature and with wildlife. So it's incredibly important if you are driving to slow down. And this isn't just in Tasmania, this is everywhere in the world. Wildlife are just trying to cross the road. We have reptiles that are cold-blooded, so they might be on the road trying to warm themselves up, get some sun, get some heat from that pavement, and cars will accidentally run over them. So if you are driving, again, especially down in Tasmania, where our pademelons are active at dawn and at dusk and they're crossing, please slow down, whether you know the road or not. That's really important. If you have been to Tasmania, you will know just how much wildlife is out and about. Not just our pademelons, but there are wombats crossing the road and Tasmanian devils screaming from the forest. So please be respectful and please give them their space while driving. Our Tasmanian pademelon once actually lived on mainland Australia, but they went extinct. and now they only inhabit Tasmania. There were a few things that impacted their populations on mainland Australia, but our introduced fox and feral cats were one of the biggest. We also had large-scale land clearing, which cleared out their homes, and in turn, they didn't have a safe place to survive and to be out of the eyes of predators here on mainland Australia. Hunting is also allowed on our Pademelons. Australia is pretty good with protecting our native species. Unfortunately, Pademelons are only partially protected, especially in Tasmania, where hunting our Pademelons is still allowed. There are organisations, though, that protect our Pademelons and nature, and you may know one yourself which you could support or volunteer at, or if you have the chance, maybe even donate to. But one that I really like is the Nature Impact Collective. They are protecting Australian wilderness areas and our Pademelons. They actually have a Pademelon Foundation that, if you wanted to check it out, I highly recommend, even just to read about and learn a bit more about our Pademelons, not even to donate, just to have that support from people who are like-minded would be really lovely. There is also the Pademelon Park Wildlife Refuge. These guys are tremendous. They are fantastic. Everything they do and have done is from their kindness and from their love and passion for wildlife. Nothing is government funded, so if you wanted to check them out to support them or perhaps even donate, again, I highly recommend. They will take in sick or injured animals and bring them back up to being the healthiest versions of themselves, and every single animal gets released back into the wild for a second chance at life. They have rescued pygmy possums and wallabies and Pademelons. So if you wanted to check them out to support them or give them a quick message and just thank them for all of the kind work they do, that is the Pademelon Park Wildlife Refuge. Pademelons as well, we learnt this on our Bilby episode. If you haven't listened to that episode, I'll link it in this episode. But we learnt that when wildlife or when a particular animal digs soil, it actually helps improve nutrient cycling and it helps plant health and it helps plants grow. And this is really what our Pademelon does as well when they are tossing and turning over soil. There was actually research done and the studies found that when there was a healthy, high amount of Pademelons in an area, in a habitat, that ecosystem was one of the healthiest ecosystems. So this just shows how incredibly important our Pademelons are. They are keeping these rainforests healthy and these forests healthy where humans get to go explore and get to use it to their advantage. And it's all thanks to our wildlife. It's all thanks to our little beautiful adorable Pademelons. So if you are wanting to go encounter one of our Pademelons, there are a few areas you can go here in Australia, especially our eastern coast. So anywhere up in our far north Queensland in our rainforest has Pademelons. Down near Tamworth in New South Wales is an excellent spot. And of course, my favourite state, Tasmania. I am there probably 2 to 3 times a year. I am so thankful and grateful that I have that opportunity to always visit and protect and encounter our wildlife down in Tasmania. The wildlife there and nature is truly out of this world. It is one of my favorite places in the world to visit. But if you are wanting to visit Tasmania, I highly recommend, and you will see not just our Pademelons, but wombats and Tasmanian devils and quolls and possums, and they are out and about every single day, any time of the day. There are dolphins and orcas some time of the year, and whales as well. Highly recommend Tasmania. But you can also check out King Island, which is also off Tasmania as well, if you're wanting to encounter our little Pademelons. So although our Pademelons are small, they are mighty. They have one of the most significant impacts on their ecosystem. And of course, they are very, very adorable, but not just cute. They are really important. And I hope you learnt that. I hope you learnt of the ways that they do give back to their ecosystem, to the planet. And I think that's really important to remember is when us humans get to go and explore our tropical rainforests, it's healthy and thriving, mostly because of the wildlife, which keeps it that way. Our wildlife is so important, and this is why I wanted to create this podcast. And I really hope that through these episodes, you've really got to understand the importance of these animals. I actually have a few ideas for the podcast in a few upcoming episodes about our extinct or critically endangered or rare Australian animals. And if you would love to hear about that, please let me know. I mean, we have our orange-bellied parrot, which there are only 50 individuals remaining in the wild down in Tasmania. And our orange-bellied parrot is so important. It's only one of 2 parrots that migrate. And when these parrots migrate from Tasmania to mainland Australia, they are spreading seeds. They are keeping both parts of the country healthy and thriving. If you guys would love to hear an episode about these animals that are on the brink of extinction here in Australia, please let me know, because I would absolutely love to discuss that with you guys. But that is all for this episode. I really hope you appreciated our Pademelon and learnt a thing or two. Thank you so much for every single week of listening and tuning in and interacting. I love getting messages from you guys, and I love having conversations with you guys. But thank you so much again. I will, of course, be seeing you this time next week. If there is a particular animal that you would love to hear about, please let me know. My message is always open. Leave a comment. Thank you so much again. I will see you this time next week. Bye for now.